When we first asked for beer and wine, the 9 businesses, that's what they wanted. They did not want liquor by the drink. However, the council refused to vote on that, and Eric Talent decided that he would put liquor by the drink on the ballot in the November election. The controversial issue of beer and wine is absolutely controversial, just like every other bill that's before Congress. I don't understand why they refused it, other than the fact that they want to save votes. People who oppose beer and wine or liquor by the drink in Lafayette and yet go to Fort Oglethorpe or Chattanooga to eat in a decent restaurant that does serve it, a little hypocritical, don't you think? Well, I guess you'd have to ask the council as to why they made it legal to drink a beer at the golf course, but I would expect it would be for economic reasons, which is the reason that the businesses that expressed a want for the beer and wine license within the city also wanted it, for economic reasons. And let's face it, we're in tough economic times, and anything that can boost their sales and put a little more profit in their pocket is good not only for them but for the community. They're saying that you have to live near an interstate to consume alcohol. That's ridiculous. If it's a small amount of revenue generated, it's more than what we've got now. The city has cut back overtime on the police force. They've talked about layoffs. They've gotten rid of the prisoner force. We need a little bit to stimulate the economy, and every little bit helps.
I don't think we're talking about bringing additional people into the county. What we want to do is keep our revenue from flowing out of this area into Fort Oglethorpe and other areas. Why should we have to go out of town to buy a drink with our meal when we should be able to do it in our own hometowns? It's not going to increase the number of people coming here by a great factor because we're not near an interstate, or it may attract some more, and hopefully it would increase the revenue of the city, which is what we're always trying to do. But I don't see a downside to that aspect of it at all.
But basically, it's a matter of choice. I want the choice. I want to be able to decide, do I want a beer or a glass of wine with my meal? If I do, fine. If someone opposes that, don't order it. If they're that strict in their religious beliefs, don't go into that establishment.
As far as people telling me that I can't drink, I feel like I'm being legislated into some kind of morality here, and I don't feel that's what the legislature should be doing. I believe that anyone who feels that they shouldn't drink probably shouldn't drink. But for the rest of us to be forced into that kind of a mode is just not right, whether it's legally through the process or not. We fought in this country too hard for our independence and our sovereignty to be put in a situation where we can't decide what we want to do.
One is biblically, in other words. Now, I realize people have asked me, is there anywhere in the Bible it says don't drink? No, there's nowhere in the Bible where it says don't drink. However, the Bible addresses the subject. Probably my favorite verse is from Ephesians, do not get drunk on wine, be filled with the Spirit. So I realize drinking doesn't send a person to hell, I'm aware of those issues. However, I've seen so much harm from it. My own granddad had a problem with it, and I, as a young person, dealt with that and watched my dad deal with that, and listened to his stories that he told about it. So, from a biblical standpoint, I just think it's not a good thing. I've seen too many people suffer.
In our city, anyway. Now, if you're in places, and I'm never for it. Please understand that. It's just because of who I am and my own personal bias against it, whether it's personally or whatever. However, if you're in the suburbs, and this is not to say I'd be for it even then, but I can acknowledge the fact that if you have a town that's on the suburb of the city along a major interstate, And there have been those, you may get Applebee's in, you may get O'Charlie's in, you may get Ruby Tuesdays in, but it's not going to happen here in Lafayette. If this thing were to go through, which I hope it doesn't, O'Charlie's isn't going to move into the square. Revenue generated from the sale of liquor by the drink in this city will be a mere drop in the bucket in comparison to the city's entire budget. We dealt with this at the golf course. Well, I say we did. It kind of got quietly voted in. Do I go to O'Charlie's? Do I go to Logan's? Yes. So my point is, but there again, there's some people that are so firm in their beliefs that they would not even go. I shop at Walmart. I shop at Milo. I eat at O'Charlie's. I eat at Logan's. So in that stance, yes. I guess the way to answer that is, I'm trying to somehow stop increased distribution. I agree. Some people in a debate, a heavily opposed person to me would say you're a hypocrite because you're against this. But I saw you at O'Charlie's. I wasn't drinking. I had iced tea or water. But if I'd had if I would have voted, if I lived in Fort Oglethorpe and had a chance to vote on it, I would have voted against it. My theory is, the more distribution points, the more problems you're going to have. The more social problems you're going to have. The more municipal problems you're going to have. If this vote turns out, if the vote turns out, heavily strong in opposition, maybe the city council will reconsider the golf course decision. You see what I mean?